Grayscale won't be pursuing an ETF. CNBC market analyst predicts that all spot ETFs will get approved in the next 60 days, and you can front run Wall Street and make millions of dollars. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Crypto Daily. Bunch of news today, and as you can see on the chart, Bitcoin's been dropping this morning. So started out the day at like 27,200. Now we're sitting at 26.5. So been seeing a little bit of negative price action this morning, but that's kind of a given with the big candle we saw earlier this week. So first piece of news is that Grayscale's CEO has been doing some media rounds. Obviously, we've been kind of tracking this story, but Grayscale had a huge win in court where they basically beat the SEC in their denial of conversion to an ETF. So the CEO said, "We don't know what the final opinion will say until we reach the end of that period, which is 45 days from the ruling." So in layman's terms, basically there's 45 days after the ruling, which was a couple days ago, where the SEC can basically fight back and try to refile their motion and get it in front of more judges. So we don't know, like, this was a big legal win, but it's not completely over yet. It can obviously get overturned. We kind of saw similar news happen with Ripple, where they obviously had the big win in court, but then the SEC went to overturn that decision. So the SEC can keep doing that, but as you'll see later in this episode, there's been a lot of wins for crypto in court. So I think the odds are still looking good for Grayscale and for crypto in general. So this article also talks about how the SEC has shown signs of softening its previously harsh stance towards digital assets, at least when it comes to exchange traded products. So the big reason I wanted to kind of throw that in here is because we are seeing the SEC kind of loosen up. We're also seeing them have major losses in court over crypto. So at the end of the day, if the SEC realizes that they're fighting a losing battle, what I think is going to happen is they will still approve all these ETFs. And they actually have more of an incentive to approve these ETFs given the losses that they're having in court. Because at the end of the day, having a regulated spot ETF is going to be a lot better for a regulatory body than having, big losses in court and then the status quo on crypto. And the status quo right now is that crypto happens on these fringe exchanges. You see these overseas exchanges like Binance and like FTX that got all their power essentially because of the lack of regulated products. So in my opinion, it's actually in the SEC's best interest for them to push through these ETFs so that they can get it in their own hands. I mean, it's better to have one hand on the steering wheel than be a passenger in the back seat. So honestly, this is one of the big reasons I see the SEC approving these ETFs is going to be that they realize a losing battle is being fought and they're going to keep losing in court. So they might as well have an ETF that they can have one hand on the steering wheel and have good regulation and oversight on. So continuing with the news about regulation and crypto services getting expanded into various jurisdictions. Hong Kong, which was previously very anti-crypto, has been getting more and more into the industry. So they released some frameworks where basically companies could apply, and a Swiss bank is basically approval in principle. So I guess they're saying that they're like on the verge of full approval and will be launching crypto services in Hong Kong soon. So obviously bullish for the industry at large. And like I said, I believe that whether it's the SEC or any other regulatory body, it's in their best interest to have one hand on the steering wheel because, crypto is inevitable. We believe it being in the industry, but I think they're starting to believe it too, being that they're, losing in court and having all these issues. So, better that they get these products regulated and be a part of it as opposed to just completely losing the war on crypto. So some CNBC analysts, obviously they did a bunch of different segments about crypto and Grayscale recently. But one of the analysts predicted that all the spot Bitcoin ETFs are going to be approved in the US this fall. And the reason, the basic reasoning is that he thinks, if they approve one, they're going to approve all of them. They're not. And all of the ETF approvals, if you actually read them, are pretty much identical. So, if they approve one and don't approve others, it's going to be kind of hard for them to backtrack and say why they did that. So it'll be interesting to see. And if you can front run Wall Street, wouldn't you do it? So, a lot of us have been dollar cost averaging or just in this industry for a long time. And, one thing that many people have talked about is, when the floodgates open and institutions come in, crypto is going to become huge. Bitcoin's going to become huge. You've got this scarce supply. So BlackRock has put in their intent that they're coming into the industry. I think ever since that day that, the news broke about BlackRock and their ETF filing, it's become pretty obvious that, institutions are coming. And BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. They have an insane track record for getting ETFs approved. So I think it's it's nothing's ever a guarantee, but it's very more than likely that an ETF's getting approved in the next, even just say the next 12 months. So if you knew that in the next 12 months that institutions were going to be able to come into this industry in a big way, wouldn't you start to buy Bitcoin? So I've talked about many times, but I'm accumulating Bitcoin at dollar cost average all the time. Being that we're at 26.5, I'll probably pick up some more once I jump off this recording. But you've got the knowledge. You've been in this industry long enough. This person saying wake up, and I would generally agree with that statement. So from Joe Burnett on Twitter, outsiders think it's crazy that 70% of Bitcoin holders don't touch their coins even after the price of Bitcoin has fallen 70 to 80%. However, holders recognize that they possess the only immutable scarce commodity known to man, and it's becoming 2 times more scarce in the next 8 months. So in 8 months, March 2024, we've got the Bitcoin halvening. So obviously every 4 years we get that halvening. So the miner rewards are about to get dropped in half. So you've got this supply shock that's coming. And then now, with the potential for an ETF getting approved in the same period of time, you've got a huge demand shock potentially coming as well. So some people are saying that they think this halvening event is going to be, and you always get this every cycle, so take it with a grain of salt. But some people are saying that this is like the final cycle, the super cycle. And, I think people were even saying that last cycle. But that's what I mean by take it with a grain of salt. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, but maybe they'll be right at some point. And if they're right, I think you're going to want to have Bitcoin. You don't want to miss that train. But if we see institutions come in at the same time as the Bitcoin halvening, I think things could get pretty wild. Last cycle, we were all looking for 100K Bitcoin. This cycle, I think 100K Bitcoin is going to be in the rear view. I think it's going to be far more than that. But obviously, that's just speculation. So I believe in owning Bitcoin for the next, 10, 20, 50 years. But if you want to speculate on the next 12 months, I think now is probably a decent time, or as good of a time as ever, to do it. So continuing with our legal battles, and like I said, there's more court wins for crypto that have been happening. So the Uniswap legal team has been in court recently, and they had a big win where this case got dismissed. And I won't read the whole, it's like 10 tweets in this thread, but the general gist of it is that the court actually had a pretty knowledgeable response in terms of smart contracts and DeFi and liquidity pools. So I think the cool part of this, and what I got from this thread, is that courts are actually becoming educated, and they're making good decisions based on information as opposed to just speculation about the technology. So what I like to see is that, and like Hayden said here, this complex technical industry is actually getting a good legal interpretation of how things work. So, many of these quotes from this document talks about the actual computer code and talking about how and comparing decentralized exchanges to like suing the NYSE or the NASDAQ. So I think that's just generally a good interpretation and positive for crypto. So again, really good court wins for crypto this year. And like I said, if the SEC wants to keep one hand on the steering wheel, I think that comes in the form of pushing these ETFs through. So stuff like this makes me even more bullish on an ETF approval. That's all I got for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and it'll be actually the September 1st episode. See ya.